My name is Eudora Whitmore, and I am 70 years old. I'm sitting here in my sun-drenched kitchen in Portland, Maine, looking out at the harbor where the fishing boats bob gently in the morning light. And I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd say. I fell in love again at 68. Not the comfortable companionship kind of love, but the real, heart-racing, stomach-flipping kind that makes you feel like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. Before I tell you my story, I want you to know what it's about. This isn't just a romance, though there's plenty of that. This is about discovering that life doesn't close its doors at a certain age. We close them ourselves out of fear, out of habit, out of the belief that we've already had our turn. This is about learning that vulnerability isn't weakness. Even when your hands shake from arthritis and you need reading glasses to see a menu, this is about the peculiar courage it takes to open your heart when you know, with absolute certainty, how badly it can break. And this is about the wisdom. Yes, the wisdom that only comes from having lived long enough to know what truly matters. So let me take you back to 2 years ago, to a Tuesday morning that started like any other Tuesday in my quiet, carefully constructed life. I had been a widow for 7 years when this story begins. My husband, Robert, died of a heart attack at 61, sudden as a thunderclap on a clear day. One moment he was trimming the roses in our backyard, humming off-key to some song from the 70s, and the next he was gone. They told me he didn't suffer. I suppose that was meant to comfort me, but all I could think was that I didn't get to say goodbye. We'd had 36 years together, and I didn't get to say goodbye. Let me tell you about Robert, because you need to understand what I lost to understand what I was afraid to find again. Robert was an accountant, which sounds boring, I know, but Robert wasn't boring. He had this way of finding joy in small things. A perfectly ripe peach at the farmer's market, the first snow of winter, a well-organized spreadsheet. He brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning for 36 years. He learned to make my mother's pierogi recipe after she died, spending hours in the kitchen getting the dough just right because he knew they comforted me. The night before he died, we'd had a small argument about whether to replace the kitchen faucet or wait another year. I'd been irritated with him for being so cautious. The next morning, he kissed my forehead before going outside, and I mumbled something about the grocery list without opening my eyes. Those were my last words to him. Something about needing more milk and eggs. The first few years after Robert's death were a fog. My daughter Venetia, yes, that's her real name. We were going through a Renaissance art phase when she was born, moved back home for 6 months. She'd watch me with worried eyes as I made dinner for 2 out of habit, then scraped half of it into the trash. She'd find me standing in the garage, staring at Robert's workbench with all his tools arranged exactly as he'd left them. Once, she caught me calling his cell phone just to hear his voice on the voicemail recording. Eventually, Venetia went back to her life in Boston, and I had to figure out mine. I did what many widows do. I built a fortress of routine. Monday was grocery shopping at 9 a.m. sharp. Tuesday was volunteer work at the library. Wednesday was book club with the same 6 women I'd known for 20 years. Thursday was dinner at Venetia's. Friday was cleaning day. Saturday was errands and gardening. Sunday was church and meal prep for the week. Every week, the same. Every month, the same. Every year, the same. My friends said I was doing well. They meant I was functional. I showered, dressed in clean clothes, paid my bills on time. I smiled at the right moments and laughed at jokes. But inside, I felt like I was living in a photograph of my own life. Flat, two-dimensional, trapped behind glass. Romance? The thought seemed absurd. Obscene, even. I was 66 years old with gray hair I'd stopped coloring, reading glasses on a chain around my neck, and a left knee that predicted rain better than any weather forecast. Who would want me? More importantly, who did I want? Robert had been my first and only love. The idea of someone else seemed like a betrayal. But here's the thing about loneliness. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It's the slow accumulation of silent dinners. It's reaching out in bed and finding only cold sheets. It's having a funny thought and turning to share it with no one. It's watching the sun set over the harbor and feeling that beauty like an ache because you have no one to witness it with you. The change began on that Tuesday morning in October. I was at the library, reshelving books in the fiction section, my volunteer task for the past 5 years. I developed an efficient system. I could shelve an entire cart in 43 minutes if no one interrupted me. I liked the solitude of it, the Dewey Decimal certainty. That morning, I was reaching for a high shelf when I heard a voice behind me. "Ma'am, I think you dropped this." I turned and saw a man holding out my volunteer name tag. He was tall, with silver hair that looked like he'd forgotten to comb it that morning, and eyes the color of sea glass. He wore a worn corduroy jacket with patches at the elbows, the kind professors wear in old movies. "Thank you," I said, taking the name tag. Our fingers touched briefly. I felt foolish for noticing. "Eudora," he read from the tag, pronouncing it correctly on the first try. Most people said it wrong. "That's a beautiful name, like Eudora Welty." I blinked. Most people my age had never heard of Eudora Welty. "Yes," I said. "My mother was a fan." "A Worn Path is a masterpiece," he said. "Have you read it?" "Many times." He smiled, and I noticed the lines around his eyes deepened like river tributaries. "I'm Thurston," he said. "Thurston Blackwell. I just moved here from Vermont." We stood there in the fiction section for another 15 minutes, talking about Eudora Welty, then Flannery O'Connor, then Annie Proulx. When he finally excused himself to find a book on maritime history, I realized I'd forgotten about my shelving cart entirely. Over the next few weeks, I saw Thurston at the library every Tuesday. He was always reading something: history, philosophy, occasionally poetry. We'd exchange pleasantries, sometimes discuss whatever book I happened to be shelving. I learned he'd been a history professor at a small college in Vermont for 37 years. He'd lost his wife, Marguerite, to cancer 3 years earlier. He had 2 sons, both living on the West Coast. He'd moved to Portland because he'd always loved the ocean and thought a fresh start might ease the grief. I told him about Robert, about Venetia, about my carefully constructed routines. He listened in a way that felt different from how people usually listened, not waiting for his turn to talk, but actually hearing me. One day in late November, he asked me, "Do you ever think about dating?" I nearly dropped the book I was holding. "Dating? At my age? Why not at your age?" He leaned against the bookshelf. "Do you think love has an expiration date?" I don't know," I stammered. "I suppose I've never thought about it." "I think about it," he admitted. "A lot. Marguerite told me near the end that she wanted me to be happy. She made me promise I wouldn't lock myself away." He paused. "Would you like to have coffee with me sometime? Not here, surrounded by books. Somewhere we could talk without whispering." My heart did something strange. It skipped, then raced. When? "Saturday. There's a cafe on Commercial Street. The Salty Dog. Do you know it?" I knew it. Robert and I used to go there when we were dating, 47 years ago. "Yes," I heard myself say. Saturday would be nice. I spent the next 4 days in a state of alternating excitement and terror. I changed my outfit 7 times on Saturday morning. I put on makeup, the first time in years. I wore my pearl earrings, the ones Robert had given me on our 20th anniversary. Was it wrong to wear them? But they were mine, part of me. I arrived at the Salty Dog 10 minutes early and sat in my car, breathing slowly, wondering if I could just drive away. What was I doing? I was a 66-year-old widow with a bad knee and no idea how to date in the modern world. Then I saw Thurston walking down the street, and something in me settled. He looked nervous too, His hair was overcombed, and he was wearing a tie with sailboats on it. The cafe was warm and smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans. We ordered. He insisted on paying, and found a table by the window overlooking the harbor. For the first 10 minutes, we were both awkward. We talked about the weather and the harbor and the coffee. Safe topics. Boring topics. Then Thurston said, "I'm going to be honest with you, Eudora. I'm terrified right now." I looked up from my coffee cup. "You are? I haven't been on a date, if that's what this is, in 41 years. I met Marguerite when I was 23. I have no idea what I'm doing." He ran his hand through his carefully combed hair, messing it up. "But I really wanted to have coffee with you. I've looked forward to it all week." His honesty disarmed me completely. "I'm terrified too," I admitted. "I keep thinking I'm too old for this, that it's somehow inappropriate." "Inappropriate for whom?" he asked. "Who made these rules that say we're not allowed to feel things anymore just because we've lived a certain number of years?" "I suppose we did," I said. "Or society did. Or maybe they're looking at us and thinking we're brave," Thurston suggested. We talked for 3 hours that day, not about books or the weather, but about real things. He told me about Marguerite's final days, how she'd held his hand and told him that love wasn't a finite resource, that loving someone new wouldn't diminish what they'd had together. I told him about the guilt I felt, how even thinking about another man felt like erasing Robert's memory. "Memory isn't so fragile," Thurston said gently. "Robert is part of you. He shaped who you are. No one can take that away. You're not replacing him. You're continuing to live." When we finally left the cafe, the sun was beginning to set. Thurston walked me to my car. "Would you like to do this again?" he asked. "Yes," I said. And then, surprising myself, "Very much." He smiled. "Next Saturday?" "Next Saturday is perfect." At my car, we stood awkwardly. Then Thurston said, "I'm going to hug you now, if that's okay." "Okay," I said. He put his arms around me, and I put my arms around him, and we stood there in the parking lot, two elderly people hugging. He smelled like coffee and wool and something clean. He was warm and solid and real. The hug lasted maybe 5 seconds, but I felt it everywhere. I drove home in a daze, and that night, lying in bed, I remembered something Robert had said once. The thing about love is that it doesn't run out. The heart is more generous than we think. Maybe he was right. Maybe loving Thurston, if that's what this became, wouldn't diminish what I'd had with Robert. Over the next few months, Thurston and I fell into a pattern of our own. Coffee on Saturdays became lunch, then dinner. We walked along the Eastern Promenade despite my bad knee. We went to the Portland Museum of Art and stood for 20 minutes in front of a Winslow Homer painting, not talking, just being together. We drove up the coast to Camden and had lobster rolls while watching the boats. But it wasn't all easy. There were complications that young lovers don't face. First, there were the physical realities. I had arthritis in my hands. He had a hearing aid he sometimes forgot to turn on. We both had medications we took in the morning. Our bodies were maps of our years, marked with scars and limitations. The first time Thurston reached for my hand as we walked, I almost pulled away, suddenly self-conscious of the age spots and swollen knuckles. But he held on, his own hand just as marked by time, and somehow that made it okay. Then there was the emotional complexity. We were both carrying decades of marriage, of habits, of memories. Sometimes Thurston would mention something Marguerite used to do, and I'd feel a surge of jealousy so sharp it shocked me. How could I be jealous of a dead woman? But I was. And sometimes I'd catch myself comparing him to Robert. The way he laughed was different. The way he drank his coffee was wrong. Everything was wrong because it wasn't Robert. I had a breakdown about it one evening in December. We'd been seeing each other for 2 months, and Thurston had invited me to his apartment for dinner. He'd cooked, and it was delicious. and I suddenly felt overwhelmed by the wrongness of it all. I was having dinner with a strange man in a strange apartment, and Robert was dead. And what was I doing? I excused myself to the bathroom and cried quietly. When I came out, Thurston was waiting. "I heard you," he said gently. "These walls are thin." I wanted to lie, but I was too tired. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered. "I don't know how to be with you without feeling like I'm betraying him." Thurston guided me to the couch. "I feel the same way about Marguerite," he said. "Every time I laugh at something you say, I feel guilty because I haven't laughed like that in years. Every time I look forward to seeing you, I feel like I'm leaving her behind." "How do we make it stop?" I asked. "Maybe we don't," he said. "Maybe we just accept that love is complicated and grief is complicated, and we're complicated people trying to navigate something without a map. Maybe we give ourselves permission to feel guilty and happy at the same time." We sat there in his apartment for a long time, two grief-worn people holding each other up, and slowly I began to understand that this was part of it. The falling apart, the picking ourselves back up, the honest conversations about how hard it was. The real turning point came at Christmas. Venetia invited me for dinner, as she did every year. This year, she invited Thurston too. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since I brought Robert home to meet my parents in 1978. What would Venetia think? Would she see this as a betrayal of her father? Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. I picked Thurston up and we drove to Venetia's townhouse in Boston together. He was nervous too, adjusting his reindeer tie repeatedly. Venetia opened the door before we could knock. She hugged me, then extended her hand to Thurston. "You must be the man my mother can't stop talking about." I felt my face burn, but she was smiling. "Come in, it's freezing." Dinner was wonderful and terrible. Wonderful because Venetia was gracious, her husband Tom was funny, and their teenagers actually engaged in conversation. But terrible because I kept seeing Robert's absence everywhere. His empty chair, the Christmas ornaments he'd made with Venetia, the photo of our wedding day on the mantel. I excused myself to the bathroom at one point, overwhelmed. Venetia followed. "I'm sorry," I said. "I thought I could do this, but it's harder than I expected." She pulled me into a hug. "It's okay to find it hard. It's okay to miss Dad. I miss him too. I feel like I'm betraying him." She pulled back to look at me. "Mom, I need you to really hear me. I'm so happy for you." I blinked. "You are? You've been alone for 7 years, going through the motions of living without actually living. You have your routines, your schedules, your safe little boxes, and I understand why. Losing Dad was devastating, but watching you exist in that fortress has been heartbreaking." She squeezed my hands. "And now you're different. You smile more. You talk about things you want to do. You seem more present, more alive. It's like you've woken up. But your father, Dad, loved you so much." Venetia interrupted. "I remember the way he looked at you, like you were the most interesting person in any room. And because he loved you that much, he would want you to be happy. Not lonely, not stuck, happy. Thurston seems like a good man, Mom. He looks at you the way Dad used to." I started crying then. "I feel so guilty every day. You're not betraying anything. You're living. That's what living people do. Dad wouldn't want you to stop living because he did. That would be the real betrayal." Her words cut through all my guilt and confusion. Why would Robert want me to be lonely? He wouldn't. He'd loved me too much for that. That night, driving home, Thurston reached over and took my hand. When I dropped him off, he leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. Brief, warm, tender. "Merry Christmas, Eudora," he said. "Merry Christmas, Thurston." I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. January brought snow and a new phase in our relationship. Thurston and I were seeing each other 3 or 4 times a week now. We had dinner together most evenings. We cooked together, navigating each other's kitchens, learning where things were kept. We were becoming a couple, but we still maintained separate lives. We hadn't talked about moving in together. That seemed too big, too fast. But we'd reached the stage where we kept things at each other's places. He had a drawer at my house. I had a toothbrush at his apartment. The physical intimacy developed slowly. We'd been holding hands for months. The cheek kisses had progressed to actual kisses. Making out at 68 is different than at 25. Knees creak, necks get sore, glasses get in the way. But there's also a sweetness to it, a lack of urgency. It was Thurston who finally brought up the question. We were at his apartment on a Friday night in late January, watching an old movie. Eudora, he said, can I ask you something? Of course. I want to be intimate with you. Not right this second, but at some point. I want that kind of closeness, but I want to know how you feel about it. I've been thinking about it too. I want it too, I said, but I'm scared. Of what? Everything. My body's not what it was. I had breast cancer, Thurston. I have scars. I'm not beautiful anymore. You're beautiful to me, he said quietly, and I have my own scars, my own body that doesn't work like it used to. I take medication that affects things. I'm not the man I was at 30 either. This is so awkward, I said, but I was smiling. Incredibly awkward, but also necessary. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday night, after dinner at my house and hours of conversation, I asked him if he wanted to stay. Stay the night, with me, if you want to. I want to, he said, very much. What happened next was tender and awkward and sweet and imperfect. We were both nervous. We had to pause when my knee hurt or his back seized up. We had to laugh when his reading glasses fell off the nightstand. But it was also beautiful. We saw each other, really saw each other, scars and all, and we accepted what we saw. Afterward, we lay together in the dark, and Thurston said, that was wonderfully imperfect. Did you feel guilty? I asked, being with someone who wasn't her? A little, but less than I expected. It felt like I was allowed to be happy again. I felt guilty too, but also like Robert would understand. Spring came slowly. By April, we'd been together for 6 months, and it settled into a comfortable rhythm. Then, in March, I had a health scare. I found a lump in my remaining breast. Not again. I couldn't do cancer again. I called Thurston, crying, barely able to get the words out. He was at my house within 20 minutes. I'll go with you, he said, to every appointment. You don't have to do this alone. And he did. He sat in waiting rooms, held my hand during the ultrasound, was there when the doctor told me it was just a cyst, benign, nothing to worry about. I cried from relief, and I realized having Thurston there didn't diminish Robert's absence, but it made the present bearable. In April, it was Thurston who had the crisis. He had a minor heart attack. I got the call from his son and drove to Maine Medical Center in a panic. What if I lost him? What if I just found him only to lose him? When I got to his room, he was sitting up in bed, looking pale but alive. I'm okay, he said. It was minor. I started crying. You scared me. All I could think was that I didn't want to leave you. Not now. Not yet. These health scares changed something between us, made us more aware of our mortality, but also more committed to living fully in whatever time we had. I want to spend my remaining years with you, Thurston said one evening in May. We were sitting on my back porch watching the sunset. I want that too, I said. So what does that look like? I think I'd like to live together, I said, surprising myself. I'm tired of saying goodbye every night. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want the mundane, everyday togetherness of a shared life. Your house or my apartment? My house, I said, if you don't mind. There's room for your books and your piano, and I'm not ready to leave it yet. I'd love to live here, he said. I'm not trying to erase your history. I'm trying to become part of your future. Over the next few months, Thurston gradually moved in. First his clothes, then his books, then his piano. We combined our lives slowly, carefully, making space for each other. It wasn't always smooth. We had our first real fight in June about where to put his desk. I felt like he was taking over. He felt like I wasn't really making room for him. We didn't speak for a whole day, but by lunchtime, the sadness had replaced the anger. I found him in the living room, reading. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry too. It's not about the desk, is it? No, it's about me being scared. Scared of losing the life I had with Robert by building a new life with you. You're not erasing Robert, and you won't lose me. At least not for a long time if I have anything to say about it. We compromised. The desk went in the guest bedroom, but I kept a corner for my sewing things. We made the space ours, not his, not mine, but ours. It was a crisp October evening, almost exactly a year since we'd met, when Thurston asked me to go for a drive. There's something I want to show you, he said. He drove us to the eastern promenade. We got out and walked to the overlook. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Do you remember, Thurston said, when we had coffee for the first time, I said I wasn't in love with you? I remember. I lied. I was already in love with you. I'd been in love with you since that day in the library, when you explained that a worn path was about persistent, unglamorous love. He paused. I know we agreed we didn't need to get married, but I want to make a promise to you. For whatever time we have left, I promise to love you, to show up for you, to honor your past while building our future. I promise to live fully, because that's what you've taught me. I was crying. I love you too. I love your kindness and your patience and your terrible singing. I love how you make me feel worthy of love, even at 68 years old. So this is our version of a proposal, he said, a promise to choose each other every day. I choose you, Thurston Blackwell. Every day, I choose you. We kissed as the sun set over Casco Bay. Then we drove home. Not my house, not his apartment, but home. That was 2 years ago. I'm 70 now, and Thurston is 73. It hasn't all been easy. We've had arguments and health scares and days where we've annoyed each other. But we've also had moments of profound joy. Let me share what I've learned about love after 60. First, it's never too late. Whether you're 65 or 75 or 85, you are not too old to want companionship, affection, romance, love. The desire for connection doesn't expire. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise. Second, you don't need to be over your previous love to love again. I will never be over Robert. He's woven into who I am. But that doesn't mean I can't love Thurston. The heart can hold multiple loves, multiple losses, multiple truths at the same time. Grief and joy can coexist. Third, give yourself permission to feel guilty and happy simultaneously. The guilt is natural. You're not betraying your past by embracing your future. You're honoring your past by continuing to live fully. Fourth, be honest about your limitations and your needs. At our age, we don't have time for games. If you need hearing aids, wear them. If you take medication, take it. If you need alone time, ask for it. The right person will understand because they have limitations too. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's authenticity. Fifth, don't expect to feel the same way you did at 25. You won't have the same intensity, the same obsessive passion. But what you'll have is better. A grounded, mature love built on genuine understanding rather than fantasy. You'll see your partner clearly, flaws and all, and choose them anyway. You'll value character over charm. That wisdom is powerful. Sixth, you will compare, and that's okay. You've loved before, and those memories don't disappear. Sometimes Thurston does something and I think, Robert would never do that. Comparison isn't betrayal. It's just your brain processing. The key is not to get stuck in it. Thurston isn't better or worse than Robert. He's different, and different is okay. Seventh, go slowly. Take time to get to know someone. Take time to heal if you need it. Take time to adjust to the idea of loving again. There's no deadline. Move at the pace that feels right for both of you. Eighth, your children will probably surprise you. I was terrified of Anisha's reaction, but she was supportive and happy for me. Most adult children want their parents to be happy. They understand loneliness. Be honest with them. Let them into your new relationship. Ninth, find someone who respects your past. This is crucial. Thurston never tries to compete with Robert's memory. He asks about him, looks at photos, acknowledges that Robert was important. A secure partner won't be jealous of your previous love. They'll honor it. 10th, accept that dating is different now. There are different social norms, different expectations. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to admit when you don't understand something. Confusion is okay. Pride is the only thing that will hold you back. 11th, physical intimacy will be different. Our bodies don't work the way they did at 30. There are medications that affect things. There are physical limitations, but there can also be tremendous tenderness. You're not performing for each other. You're connecting. Communicate openly. Laugh at the awkward moments. 12th, you will face health crises. This is inevitable at our age. One or both of you will get sick. This is terrifying, but also an opportunity to show up for each other. When Thurston had his heart attack, I realized that loving him meant accepting the possibility of losing him. Both joy and worry are part of the package. 13th, build new traditions while honoring old ones. We still have Christmas at Venetia's. Thurston comes now part of the family. But we've also started new traditions. Sunday morning pancakes, Friday movie nights, summer trips to Acadia. We haven't erased our old lives. We've built a new life that incorporates the old. 14th, don't worry about what other people think. Some people will be supportive. Others will be confused or amused or uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is their problem, not yours. You're not living your life for them. Finally, and most importantly, be brave. It takes tremendous courage to open your heart when you know exactly how badly it can break. You've already survived the worst. You know what loss feels like, but you also know what love feels like. And that knowledge is worth the risk. Every single time. I'm sitting here in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I started this story, but everything is different now. Thurston is at the table doing the crossword puzzle, occasionally asking me for help. The roses in the garden, Robert's roses, are blooming. There's a photo of Robert on the mantle, next to a photo of Marguerite, next to a photo of Thurston and me at Acadia. The past and the present coexisting, not competing, just being. Last night, I had a dream about Robert. We were young, in our first apartment. He was making scrambled eggs, humming off-key. I walked up behind him and put my arms around his waist, and he turned and kissed my forehead. "You're doing great, Dora Bird," he said, using my mother's old nickname. "I'm glad you found someone. I'm glad you're not alone." I woke up crying, but grateful crying, like I'd been given permission. "What are you thinking about?" Thurston asks, looking up from his crossword. "This," I say, gesturing around us. "Us. How lucky I am." "We're both lucky," he says. "I was so lost when Marguerite died. I thought my life was over. And then I met you, and suddenly life had color again." "Same," I say. "I was just existing, and now I'm living, really living." He smiles at me, and I smile back, and it's such a simple moment, but it contains everything. Love, loss, grief, joy, the past, the future, the precious present. I'm 70 years old, and I'm in love, and I'm not ashamed. I'm not apologetic. I'm living, really, truly living. And if there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. It's never too late to open your heart. Never too late to take a chance. Never too late to believe that you deserve tenderness, companionship, love. Your age doesn't disqualify you from happiness. Your past doesn't determine your future. Your losses don't define your capacity for joy. You are never, ever too old to fall in love. So if you're sitting there wondering if it's too late, I'm here to tell you that you haven't missed your chance. Your story isn't over. There are still chapters to be written, still surprises waiting, still people you haven't met who will change everything. All you have to do is be brave enough to turn the page. I'm 70 years old, and I'm just beginning to understand what it means to truly live, and I wouldn't change a thing.